This is Angelo Pizzolo, manager of the Oral History Program with the Battleship New Jersey in Camden, New Jersey. Today is Saturday, April 7, 2018. We are on board the Battleship New Jersey, and our interview guest is Mr. Barry Mattingly from Mount Washington, Kentucky. Mr. Mattingly was on board for the entirety of the Vietnam Commission and was a gunner's mate in Turret 1. Welcome home, Mr. Mattingly.
Thank you.
All right. So what is your current age?
69 3/4.
Okay. When did you enlist in the Navy?
1967, September.
Okay. And how old were you when you joined the Navy?
19.
And what was your inspiration for joining the Navy?
My father was a Navy man.
Okay. And what was the path to get into the Navy before boot camp? Recruiter, how did you go about that?
Recruiter came to our school and we talked to him. And that's when I joined the Navy.
Okay.
I was on a delay program, so I joined and went in 3 months later after signing all the paperwork and everything. Went to Camp Barry and spent my boot camp years there.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any stories you'd like to share from boot camp or your experiences?
It was an experience. Not used to have everything put in place. Every T dotted, I crossed, or whatever. And it was a challenge for me because I used to be carefree and wasn't really too strict rules. But that changed a whole lot right there.
Mm-hmm. Did you go to any A schools?
No.
Okay. When you first found out you were assigned to the USS New Jersey, what was your reaction? Do you remember?
I said, what am I going to that state for? The petty officer that trained us at boot camp, when he gave me my orders, he said, boy, you're lucky. I won't mention. He says, you're going to New Jersey. That's why I said, why am I going to New Jersey? He said, you flew at the battleship. Oh. No, it didn't make any difference to me at the time because I knew I was going to be gone away from home and saw part of the world anyhow.
Mm-hmm. All right. And you were on board for the for the Vietnam commissioning ceremony, correct?
And decommissioning.
Okay. We'll talk about that shortly. But when you first came up and saw the New Jersey for the very first time in your life, what was your reaction?
I was amazed. How could something that big float? You know, with the tonnage and all that part of it, there's no way it can float on the water. And prove me wrong.
Mm-hmm. So, give us some of your memories of commissioning day.
With the captain at the time, Snyder, it was unreal in a way because the way the captain of the ship would talk to the other guys, just like his one of your brothers or kid. It wasn't the highest society officers that would stick their nose up. He would be personal and on your level. And the number of people that was on board the ship, how can they squeeze that many people on a ship? Like when I learned number one turret and all the things you have to do it, and all the number of people that's in it. You know, you're always elbow to elbow, and you turn, you got a handful of elbow or something in your mouth or something or other. It was awful crowded. But then again, it was better than a tin can.
Mm-hmm. All right. And what was your duty stations on board, your regular duty station?
Number one turret.
And that was your general quarters station?
Yes.
And your watch station also?
Yes.
All Turret 1. Okay. So what was life like that in Turret 1? Just what was your job and some of the duties you performed, and what was it like to actually load the guns?
Well, I did all parts of it. I operate the ram, which takes the projectile into the barrel, and it also takes the powder bags into the gun itself. And you can only go so far. You have to stop and back up on the ram lever, then put the rest of the powder in. You had a stop place on it, And did that, did the powder guy, which controlled the powder coming into the chute before it goes into the gun. And also the gun cleaners, we called it, where we cleaned the top of the interrupting breech on the gun, make sure it didn't have any fire or anything onto it. And wore protective clothing and sleeves, but it's still hot. And when you have a firing mission inside the cannon, inside the turret, it roared worse than you think it would. But it was a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And also, number one turret, I did also the powder bags in the bottom of the turret, loading them, the shells, loading them, and offloading them, and loading the gun. So I covered every base you can think of as far as loading the gun. I didn't fire the gun, but I put the 45-70 bullet in the little container it goes into to fire it.
Mm-hmm. All right. It did get hot in there, correct? You know, you happen to know some of the temperatures, or you just know very hot?
110 in the shade.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, what port of call stood out to you? Do you have any favorites during your time in
Singapore,
mm-hmm.
Hong Kong, 4 times Hawaii, Philippines. I guess Hong Kong was the most impressive.
That was your favorite?
Yes.
Okay. Any travels through the Panama Canal?
Yes, we went through the Panama Canal, and before we went through it, they had to knock off the excess pipes that were on the side of the ship for the spillways, and the water would run off because with the mine, it was too wide to go through the canal.
Mm-hmm.
We had about a foot clearance, maybe on either side of the ship going through the canal.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you pass the equator?
Yes, went from Polywog to Shellback.
So you, as much as you'd like, or as little as you like, can you describe that ceremony?
Well, the Polywog, if you can hold your breath a long time, you're a good sailor. I mean, we had officers enlisted getting sick to their stomach, turning green, because they would, the shellbacks would make a tunnel you have to go through, almost like a bunch of burlap bags sewed together to make a long tunnel. And they filled it full of all the garbage you could think of from the mess decks. Even when somebody got sick in the mess decks, they saved it and put it in that tube where you had to crawl through. When you went across the equator, then they formed lines. You had to bite off on something you didn't know what it was, and spit it out because it choked you half to death. But going from a polywog, which is to them was a low life, and then we went to shellback, and you were King Neptune's sidekick on that part of it, because you were more important in the fort.
Mm-hmm.
You was just a number on a card.
When you were on board, Bob Hope did perform a Christmas show in 1968.
Yes,
How much do you remember that show? Who were the guests? Any moments stand out during that show?
and Margaret stood out like a ooh la la. And then Rosie Greer, he was one of the guests on there, football player. Him and Mr. Hudson, which is a gunner's mate, were about the same size, probably about, say, 6'7", 6'9", 250 to 290 pounds. And they were set beside each other showing their bicep. And their bicep looked big as a football. And then, of course, Bob Hope and his special that he had. And the dancers, I forgot what their names were, but pretty young ladies that said to the boy, like, whoa.
All right. During the 120 days on the gun line, what stands out from that?
Watching the guns fire, seeing how hot, how intense it can be, how people work together to get a job accomplished. Because if one person goofed up, it went on down the line and affected other people too. Like they load the gun every minute, and 6 bags of powder with one projectile weighing anywhere from 1,900 pounds to 2,700 pounds, depending on your firing mission. Same with the powder, with 330 to 630 pounds of powder. And all that goes in is like clockwork. You got the ram, projectile in, and all the people working close together and being your best buddy when you need it.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you ever get a chance to meet Captain Snyder? And if so, what are your memories of him? What stood out?
I actually didn't talk to Captain Snyder personally, but observing him walking around the ship, talking to all the enlisted men, it's not like some officers, they go around, you were afraid to say hello, or you didn't salute him, you were in trouble. But Captain used to salute him automatically, no ifs and buts about it. But he would be on your level, he would talk to you as a person, not as an individual number. He was stern, but yet he was kind-hearted.
Mm-hmm.
He would probably give your shirt off the back if you needed to, or then again, he could make the stripes go the wrong way.
Okay. Were you down in the mess decks? There is a story about Captain Snyder going down to the mess decks and not appreciating what was going on there. You want to describe that?
I wasn't at that particular one, but I heard word from the other ones that he came down with them. Said whether it be breakfast, lunch, or dinner. He was set with different ones. And one day he come down, he tasted the food, and said, "This is unacceptable. If I can't eat it, no one can." He made him throw all the food out and start over for that day. But he was quite a man.
Okay. Now, were you scheduled for the second USS New Jersey deployment to Vietnam?
No.
Okay. Were you on board for the decommissioning ceremony?
Commissioning and decommissioning.
Okay, so talk about the decommissioning ceremony, Captain Pennison's speech. What do you remember of that day?
His speech I didn't remember too much, but the loss of the guys you knew in the service, from your closest friend to maybe your worst enemy, it's something you never forget. And there's some of them that you'd like to go see, but you don't know how old they are now. And they're like me, where we forget a lot at time. But the decommissioning and the loss that which had so much to look forward to, but then again, how much we had to lose.
Mm-hmm. All right. And when you heard the word that she was being decommissioned, what was your reaction? How did you feel? And do you remember what reason you were told it was being decommissioned?
They said we didn't need it anymore for being decommissioned. The tour that we had in Vietnam, that says with the age of all the best airships and everything, and they could do more bombing than what we could, but it's hard to tell how many thousands of pounds of shells we shot over into Vietnam, saving other people. But decommissioning of it, it was a sad moment because it's going to be lost. The ship is going to the graveyard as we knew it then, and just sit and rust away.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what decommissioning meant to me. A farewell.
Okay. Now, we're going to fast forward a little bit. Do you remember when you heard that the New Jersey was going to come back for the 1980s commission?
No, sir, I didn't hear that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, is this the first time that you've been back to New Jersey since you disembarked?
Yes.
Okay. Before we go further on that line of questioning, when did you get out of the Navy?
In September of 71.
Okay. Did you serve on any ships after the New Jersey before?
Yes, DD-808 to Dennis J. Buckley.
Okay. And where was that ship operating?
Off the coast of Vietnam.
So you were second toward Vietnam on a different ship?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What was your mission during that?
Gunner's mate in charge of the 5-inch 38 guns.
And did you use the 5-inch 38 for shore bombardment?
Oh, many a time.
Okay. All right. Now, let's go ahead and fast forward. We're talking about the first time you've been back, which is today. Now, the first time you came back, you're coming up the pier. There she is, the New Jersey. What was your reaction?
Well, you probably won't believe it, but I pointed to my grandson's #1 turret, number one barrel. And when I was back young and about half crazy, and 19 years old, 150 pounds, and look back when I crawled through the barrel.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the truth. There's Danny Morris in Ohio, and another guy in New York. We were young, full of energy and everything else, which I won't mention. And but we had a clean detail on the guns. That's where we tie a big brush around the brush, go back and forth, clean the barrel of the gun inside. And when we pulled it out, we looked at each other and said, if they can go through there, we can go through there. So the three of us crawled through each barrel of the number one turret. It's 80 some odd feet from muzzle to breech, for a fact.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, prior to you actually coming to New Jersey, the story was shared with me that you were not expecting this trip. So you want to talk about how it all came about? And when did you realize that's where you were going?
Didn't realize it till we got here. We stopped in Chicago. I said, what would I stop in Chicago for? And I said, well, we got transferred to Philadelphia. And Philadelphia, what's going on? Ball games are all over. And it just didn't click. Even though I even said the name New Jersey, because there's a gentleman sitting beside me on the plane. He said he lived in New Jersey. And I did not have any clue what was going on. She kept it a good secret. Then when we got to the hotel, she said, look across there. I said, what? That ship across the water. And my mouth dropped like that. And like, it's in New Jersey.
All right.
One of them grins you couldn't even wipe off.
So let's talk about the impact of naval life. After you got out of the Navy, what was the impact on your life? How did it affect you to this point?
Maybe more conscious of other people. Try to be polite. You know, it's a little redneck growing up. Learn respect of my elders meant a whole lot. And after I got out, I was up in father-in-law Hall Hay, and I stopped a little beer joint. Where we do when we get so hot, we grab a beer and go on a little hay. And this gentleman was sitting there. He was one of the foremen at the plant that I went to. He said, "You looking for a job, boy?" I said, "Yes, sir." He gave me the address of Reynolds Mill Company in Louisville. And I went there, applied for a job, and told you who sent me. They hired me the next day.
Mm-hmm.
So I had 3 days' pay. My first paycheck, it was over $100. And I thought I was on cloud nine. And like I say, that's the respect I had for him and what he gave me for being in the service. It went a long way for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And retired.
Okay. And what was your civilian job again? I'm sorry.
I worked with Reynolds Mill Company in Louisville, Kentucky on extrusion presses.
Mm-hmm.
To run extrusion like for storm doors, windows, tubing for air conditioning, heating caps, and anything you do for molded aluminum up to 7.5 inches wide. And that was a great experience on that.
Mm-hmm.
Got a little burn to prove it.
Yeah. All right. So at this point, are there any other stories or anything you remember that you'd like to talk about?
I did receive a letter from New Jersey if I wanted to come back and work on, and I had turned down because my wife was expecting her first child, and that's the only reason I didn't go back. Because I would have been a heartbeat if we hadn't had children expecting on that end of it.
And what did the Navy want you to do if you came back to New Jersey?
Same thing I did for 2 years and be a gunner's mate. Trained them on number one press, would be number one turret, first, second, or third gun, and just let them know the knowledge that I had of it to pass it on down to them.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's talk about your family after you got out of the Navy. Go ahead and I'll just let you talk about that, your personal life.
Well, I met this little brat of a girl at the time, but then when I come back, she was a young lady. And she used to tease me, irritate me, and then end up marrying her. She still teases me and irritates me. And that's all part of life. And it was lost for words.
So what is your family composition right now?
I got got 4 grandkids, 2 boys and 2 girls.
Mm-hmm.
And my 2 oldest grandsons, they're both very smart, as long as they use their noggin in the right way. And not my foot will be where they'd be sitting in the john. But being polite. I had 2 granddaughters. One very intelligent. The other one's a handful, but she's smart too in her own ways. And like I said, my wife, she used to give me a hard way to go. And I love her from this day and always will.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any stories, any last comments? Please, since we're getting ready to wrap up, if there's anything else you thought of, this is basically an open-ended question to just speak out.
Did I mention about crawling through the barrel of a gun?
Yes, you did.
Well, that was quite a challenge on that. And like I say, just the time being in the service, the people I met, the companionship, the resentment, whatever, something you never forget. And it's like when the lady would take us around on the tour, I filled her in on all the things she didn't know. It's about the powder room, the shell protector room, on how to move things around, and what this wrench was for, what that one was for. And he said very knowledgeable. I said, sometimes I forget a whole lot, and other times I remember like it was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And yesterday is always feel like tomorrow.
Okay. Anything else?
All right, about sum it up, sir.
All right. In that case, thank you for your service and taking time to join us today. I hope you enjoyed the tour.
Very much.
And I guess the one question is, how does she look today?
Except for the deck, the teak wood, it broke my heart when I see the deck. Because it used to be when we was first starting out in the boatswain part, and we would clean the deck, what we call a holy stone, which was just a white coarse brick, and we used them so much you would wear a hole all the way through it, or wear the handle out that you used, going back and forth, go 30 times across one board and move the next one back 30 times, and it wasn't snow white when you got done, you went over and done it again. And with the deck on it now, when it's decayed and falling apart, it was a heartbreak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What happened was the ship sat in Bremerton for 9 years after the 80s decommissioning. And if you know anything about the weather in the Pacific Northwest, we are trying to replace all the teak on the ship. We do have a fundraiser going on. So I just, you were talking about holy stoning and other duties. There was something else I just thought of. Did you ever get to see Captain Snyder's swimming pools? And what was that like?
That was something unusual.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, here is Captain on a battleship, got his own swimming pool. You know, we're all like, how can he do that? I said, he's the captain, he can do anything. And with the knowledge that he has, and what he would love people to work with him and ask questions about, they would do anything for him, and they did. Because he was that much respected.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anything else? Anything else you can think of?
He used to sit here and be weathered out and kind of rust away. If I had a yard big enough, I put it in my yard.
All right. In that case, again, thank you for your service and taking time to join us. This will conclude our interview. And again, this is Angelo Pizzullo, manager of the Oral History Program on board the Battleship New Jersey in Camden, New Jersey. Today is Saturday, April 7th, 2018.